Hello, welcome to today's video, and today's story time is going to be how I got into motion capture, performance capture. I'm sure you're like me and you're interested or intrigued by this field, so I just wanted to go through how I personally got into it, my little path through, and essentially how I got to where I am today by working on several different types of video games, TV series, all that jazz in motion capture and performance capture. So if there's something that you're interested, make sure you stick around and give it a little cheeky thumbs up whilst you're here. Firstly, you've probably heard the term motion capture more often than performance capture, but I'm just going to give a brief description what the difference is between the two. Motion capture is when they only capture your body movement. This is often when you see people in those lycra suits with all the reflective balls on them, and they're literally just filming the body movements, so the skeleton of the performer. That's the data that they are collecting. Now, performance capture is when they're capturing more than just the body. Now, this can include the face, which is any facial expressions. This is when you'll probably either see a camera that is in front of them, or when you see the actual markers on their face, and the voice that they're capturing as well. You can either do one or both, depending what the performance requires. I'm sure you probably know it, but I just wanted to quickly distinguish the difference between the two before we get started. Because the terminology of mocap, or motion capture, is more broadly used, or at least personally what I've seen with people who aren't really in the field as such. They kind of know that term more often than performance capture. But between us, we know the difference. But yeah, I'm just going to probably say either or throughout it. So now, how did I get into this? As I briefly a little bit mentioned, this is probably going to be a story time, but I do think it's good to find out and see how different performers get into this field, because it is completely different for everyone depending on your skill sets or what background you came from, in the sense of like training and things like that, or who you know, as they say. It does differ, so this is just one way of how you could potentially get into this field. And yeah, I just hope this is helpful to you. If not, oh well, but you know, you never know. So starting or going back to my third year whilst I was at university. So I had a dissertation and I based my subject on, or my title was, how is animal movement utilised in the industry or in theatre, film, the title's something like that. Yeah, I can't quite remember, it's quite long. But basically I pretty much just based a lot of my research on theatre, how animal movement's used, on stage essentially. But as I was delving more into it, and obviously from people's advice and experience, a better dissertation is broadening it out to other medias, and obviously I really love film, always have, so I wanted to be able to compare the two. Long story short, I got into motion capture, delved into that. As you'll probably guess, that normally the first person that comes to people's mind when you think of like motion capture is Andy Serkis, of course, with, you know, Dawn of the Apes, Gollum, the big projects. And yeah, I just went on a deep dive from there, and I discovered so many performers in that realm. Like, there's so many incredible performers and out there that do motion capture for video games, TV, film, you name it. And yeah, I just got so interested in it. I also love the performance of Benedict Cumberbatch as Smaug in The Hobbit. Such a good performance. Originally, little fun fact, apparently, because I don't want to, just in case I got it wrong, they weren't going to do performance capture for him, but because of his self-tapes and his passion on wanting for the character to be so physical and it helped his performance, they ended up capturing it. I'll show you a little clip now. It's so awesome to see the whole physicality of his performance and how it affected his voice. It's just quality.
I am fire! I am death! All must burn! burn it must. All will turn to ash and dust.
But yeah, things like that. That's what I based my subject on, and I just done a deep dive on everything about it, and I just started to fall in love with it. And what I'd done, I started to reach out to such performers who are in this industry or related industry, seeing if they could answer my questions for my dissertation, and that's where I started to build up my knowledge of things a little bit more. And there was one particular person how it helps me lead into where I went with my training, and this is essentially how I found the Mocap Vaults, which is who I trained with for motion capture. So it all starts somewhere, but I'll get into that company a little bit later on. So now fast forward to once graduated, I knew that I wanted to get into motion capture. I already figured out that I really wanted to get into more voiceover, especially for video games, and motion capture just seemed like something I could never get into. I thought it was even smaller of a niche thing to get into than film, for example. But I knew that it was a dream that I would love to get involved into. So I'd done a lot of research, and at the time, obviously this was 2016, there wasn't really much out there, especially online, that I could find about how you can get into this field. So yeah, it was a bit tricky at the time. But I personally wanted to train with some type of company to learn more about motion capture. For me, I'm a bit of a overdoer, over-preparer with like roles and things like that. And I wanted to understand the technical side a little bit more, because I was clueless to obviously what went on and what requirements they would need of me if I was ever in the volume. So instead of, being all confident going, yeah, I can do it, and diving in deep. I'm terrible with terminologies, but I didn't want to be overwhelmed with the idea of it. I like to be prepared. So I looked into companies that might do motion capture training, and this is where I found particularly the Mocap Vaults. Now there was a couple other companies. For me, the Mocap Vaults made most sense because I could do a day class of one of theirs in London, which was a lot more viable for me. There was a couple other companies that would do like a week intensive, but because I was based in Southampton, it would have been hard for me to do a week somewhere in, I don't know, I think there was one in like Bath or things like that. Or yeah, it just would have been a lot harder for me. So popping into London for a day's training was the best option for me, because I could just go to my parents' house, travel into London. So I went through pretty much most of their stages at the time of their classes of preparation, how you learn motion capture. And it started off with introduction to motion capture, where, bear in mind, a lot of their initial lessons, you're not straight in the volume, you don't get a suit on straight away. You understand the more that acting training side of it and how to prepare role wise or environment wise before you even get to the volume. To me, this spoke words to me, and I love that kind of side of it, because obviously I'm from a theatre background. That preparation and training prior, before you get into somewhere, is what I'm used to, what I love and enjoy. It's more creative, I feel. There's less pressure, and it's more of a, enjoyable environment to play around and learn new things and fail, all of that jazz. So I went through their introduction class, fell in love with them, and then from there I wanted to do as many classes as I could with them. I'd done some of their classes, such as the Heroes and Monsters, Class 1 and Class 2. They separate them for obviously different reasons. I won't go into the full breakdown. This isn't me trying to promote them or an ad or anything, but I'm just trying to give you a little brief breakdown of like the classes that I'd done and the process I did. This was all over time. Sorry, this is a bit random, but I had done their classes in stages throughout a couple years, purely because they were getting so popular, and the demands of their classes were obviously getting harder for me to get into the class. And obviously, because I wasn't living in London, I had to be a bit more specific with which master classes I booked onto. So my training with them was a bit more sparse, because I had to stagnate when I trained with them. But I went through, so back to the classes. I went through their Heroes and Monsters Class 1 and Class 2, which I thoroughly enjoyed, and I gained so much knowledge. I think then after, can't quite remember my timing, I might get this wrong. Yeah, I attended their summit which I just came as a viewer to see the whole process. It was like 2 days, and you go to Centroid, which is at Pinewood. Well, at the time it was at Pinewood Studios, and you would see other performers of their process of creating scenes within the volume and essentially doing like a mock of what it would be like if you were on shoot. There was loads of different types of participants, whether it was from a performer's side or you had some people from the directing side who would direct the performers firsthand. Ultimately, it's a way to showcase everything and everyone, and you get showreel scenes at the end of it. And I learned so much from this, whether it was from seeing other performers within the volume, their preparation, how they performed, or if it was from the knowledge and experience from the other leaders, directors, just so many people within the industry. It was first-hand viewing for me to see what it would be like on a shoot, and that was really when I was like, yes, this is something that I want to do. I want to be performing like they are. I need to be doing this. So that really, I just really gained a lot from that experience, and meeting so many different people and their journeys and blah, blah, blah. I loved it. But overall, I feel the thing that I benefited most from these classes was, as I explained, they're more of a training class. It really helped me understand what a production company or the studio require the performer to do or create within that environment. It's obviously completely different to anything I've ever done before. I like to think performance capture is a bit of a blend between theatre acting and screen acting, depending what you're doing. You know, you might need something a bit more theatrical and a bit more emphasis on the physicality if it's certain walk cycles, or they need the physicality of the performer to come through into the skeleton of the mocap, whereas you might have a cut scene that's a bit more screen-wise essentially, and it's a bit more specific between certain movements and gestures, and it has to be more subtle and minute details that comes across a lot better, natural and authentic essentially on screen. So again, yeah, I've just found it so interesting it was such a blend between the two, and learning the technicality prior made me feel so much more confident and just prepared if I ever got a job in mocap, especially with like technical terminologies like walk cycles, locomotion, things like that. If they threw those words at me in a studio, I would have been like, yeah, okay, and then had a little internal panic and scream. But learning it beforehand, I started to feel so much more confident of if I went into a job the next day, if that happened, and if they went, yeah, we're going to do a walk cycle, this, that, I'd be like, cool, sweet, where do you want me? Do you want this type of thing, that, this, that, blah, blah, blah. I would have been ready. I would have felt really good. It really just helped me prepare for different circumstances might be thrown at you, and especially if it was last minute or you have such little time to prepare for multiple different characters and physicalities. And yeah, I just, as you can tell, I really did enjoy learning with them. So then on, I went to participate in their cinematics class. That one you actually were within the volume, and that was again at Centroid Pinewood. And we had a range of different scenes that we would film, whether it was a group scene, which was more like an actual scene that could be within a video game. We done a couple more practical, physical performances that were just motion capture, and just to show the range of scenes or characters that you may do within, within the industry. We also had a monologue scene, which was again filmed as well, which was perfect for showreel material. At the end of the day, a lot of it's all to do with showreel material, and this was the time that you could get that footage so you can then promote yourself within this industry. And so it looks really professional because they had multiple different cameras that just captured everything. And I really enjoyed this because it felt like I was doing a job. I had the camera in front of my face, had the full head rig, full mocap suit, and yeah, I was just in my element. Even though I was shitting bricks, of course, it was just so good. And I feel like one of those moments is whether you're make or break of if you really want to do this or you're like, nah, I'll appreciate from afar. So yeah, I really did enjoy this, and I got several different types of scenes that I could then use for my motion capture reel, which was perfect. And I will inject here, this whole process wasn't, as I mentioned, one after another. This was over several years because, of course, money comes into play. I just graduated and had a million different things I thought or did do after graduating. And yeah, I pretty much stuck with one avenue of how I got into the mocap, or how I essentially trained. This was years ago. Time has changed, and there are so many other companies you can train with depending on the situation, circumstances, where you're located, all of that jazz. There's so many incredible opportunities now. When I got into it, it was very limited, but that still doesn't deny how much I thoroughly enjoyed training with this company. Still do recommend, but yeah, it wasn't within 1 year I smashed out all of it. It was probably over like 3 or 4 years, and it was a gradual progress of learning, researching, and just figuring out how I could really get in this avenue without knowing anyone, basically. That was the hardest bit. And getting footage, that's always the hardest bit, and good footage, that is hard. But I will do another video down the line of more updated and modern, of more updated ways of how you could get into motion capture, and yeah, just how many more incredible ways that you could get into it. So yeah, don't worry, I will do one of those videos next. It's just I thought it'd be good to do the backstory first of how I got into it. So back to my story. Alongside of doing the motion capture training, I did also try and train in other skills to help me become more employable in motion capture, performance capture. I started to realise that a lot of people who were very successful within this industry were either famous, or if they are more like myself, they had other skill sets under their belts. A lot of people who have got into motion capture is because they can do gymnastics, parkour, all of these very quiet, extreme things which will really help when you're in the volume. And I kind of realised that I didn't have much to offer. I had my acting, you know, theatre, started to get into film, but I didn't have much else than that. So during this time of training, I started to train more in screen combat, theatre combat, whether it was weapons. This is when I went through like my BADC qualifications and not certifications. I'll link another video of my experience with that. I break down a lot more, but essentially I was trying to create other avenues of making me more employable within this industry, particularly weapons, firearms, combat and fighting, because I knew that this is things that I really did love, and I felt like I would be good enough to do that, but it wasn't so far field of I don't have that much time to get that good in it to be able to offer it, because there's obviously so many incredible performers out there who've been doing it probably since they're 5. I don't have that amount of time to catch up, essentially. So that is something that I did alongside whilst trying to get into my dream of getting into this field. So jump to 2019. This is when I started to have some footage under my belt from the cinematics class. And this is ultimately the goal, is getting footage to show that you've been in the volume, you've been in the suit, you know what you're doing essentially, and make you more employable. I like to relate it to like an acting show reel. Often that is the goal, to then get jobs in that way. Think of it like that. And at the time, I'm pretty sure I didn't have any representation. I was still on my lonesomes doing my own research and networking, and I was just pretty much emailing companies. I probably shouldn't, now looking back at it, the way I probably conducted myself. It wasn't very professional, but I didn't know what else to do. So I was just trying to put myself out there, and I did get recommended to try and contact some more smaller or independent motion capture studios and offer my services for demos. Now, with a lot of demos, you are doing the work for free. They might be able to cover your travel expenses or give you some food, but it's essentially you're helping each other out. You're going to get footage from them, and they get to keep the data that they capture from your performances for whatever they want. You still will most likely have to fill out disclaimers and all of that stuff. Make sure you read them, take photos of them, because you never know. But yeah, it's essentially a collaboration where they might have some particular movements or cycles that they want to capture, and you can also perform some things that you would like to do, whether it's maybe a monologue, you want to do a little action scene of a certain skill you have, things like that. Essentially, it was just an opportunity for me to capture things that I was missing within my motion capture reel to make me more hireable. But it's such a good way to start out, because you get to get in the volume within these amazing companies, possibly try new technology in gear and just things you wouldn't have the chance to do yourselves. Like, it's such a different thing from acting for like show reels. You can just film something at home and it's fine. Whereas with motion capture, you won't have that type of suit and tech at home. I'm pretty sure the only people I know who do are people within that field. So yeah, it's such a valuable thing to get in within the companies, and also it's a first step in communication with them. I never really considered it like that before, but I'm still in contact with the companies that I put myself out there and you know, filmed scenes with, and they are doing so well now. And yeah, you just don't think of it, or I was thinking a bit too small, but it's a great way to get your first step in the door. So just by contacting different companies that had mocap studios or suites or volumes, I offered my services of what I could do and what I would like to capture, and they could keep everything as long as I got the recorded footage of it, whether it was just me within the volume in the suit, or also side by side the actual skeleton or animations of what I was performing within an environment or a space. Or you saw the character's skin as well, so then I could do side by side comparisons. So I saw this as a comparison like with film industry. Often you might do projects free of charge to get showreel scenes. I saw this as the same thing. I was just starting out in it, didn't have any experience. So I worked with a couple companies along this process. One in particular was Target 3D. And as I said, to this day, I've done a couple of other projects and captured multiple different things within their volume. And as I briefly said, I pretty much had creative freedom of what I would like to capture. I obviously let them know, and we had a certain amount of time to capture it. So with me being an over prepper and planner, I had it all written down to a T, sent over to them and saying, this is things that I'd like to capture. Is there anything particular you would like to do? And I would say if I could do it or not. And that's pretty much how we spent our day, or, you know, half a day of when they weren't on any other projects. We would film stuff. And funny enough now, they actually offer acting workshops for fellow actors or creatives or whoever you are want to try motion capture yourselves and have an introduction lesson. As you say, you never know how things go. So yeah, so they do offer some things now, and they're in a new volume space as well, which is so much bigger, and it's an awesome space. So yeah, you never know how things are going to go. So I captured several other footages and scenes that I felt would make me more employable for my showreel and show my range of skills that I could offer. I also brought along a friend so I could do some fighting scenes and reaction scenes as well, because that was another skill that I was developing during the time and wanted to specialise in. So since I've pretty much just spent my time trying to network, connect with people within the industry, keep my knowledge up to date about developments within it, and yeah, just try and make my way into the industry. You know, going to acting events, networking events, seeing what other practitioners or performers are doing, talks and things like that out there. I would try to attend them all. A lot of them, yeah, they were in London, but it didn't bother me. I could travel there easy. But these days, they're all over. And worldwide. I will say that, worldwide. And in 2020, I did actually gain a motion capture agent or an acting agent who did specialise in motion capture, but unfortunately for myself, I didn't land any projects during this time. So still to that day, I hadn't had a pay-in working mocap job that I landed through an audition or an agent. It was still through demos or, you know, just getting in the volume, whether it was from training aspects. Yeah, so I hadn't had any jobs by this time. And I can't remember what date, but I do remember gaining an audition for my first ever in-person motion capture audition. And I'm going to save that story for another time because it was quite embarrassing, or at least for me, and I still think about it till this day. But in a nutshell, I learned a lot from this audition, and it did help me in my preparations for future auditions after that. I learned so much from it. But it still went well. I didn't get it, as you probably would guess. But yeah, it was an experience. It just made me realise of how much I felt underprepared or would have changed within the circumstances. Yeah. I'll save the story for another time. If you would like to hear this, let me know. Don't worry, we're almost coming to the end of my story time. I promise. So now, 2021, this is where I gained my current motion capture, performance capture agent, and I haven't looked back since. You know, as much as I put a lot of work in myself of reaching out to other companies and professionals of, you know, hopefully trying to get motion capture jobs myself. Yeah, I would just say she's the best agent I could ask for. I've had many different agents. Well, not many, but I've had a few different agents over my time so far. I've had a few different agents, especially with acting within my journey so far. And a lot of them didn't really work out, or I didn't gain any jobs from any of them. But since being represented by her, she has helped me so much in just progressing my career within this industry. The opportunities I've got so far was because of her networking within the industry. And yeah, she's been the biggest asset. And I know that might not sound helpful for you trying to get into the industry, but I'm trying to say it in the sense of, as they say, it is important to find the right agent for you. And there are so many out there that say they can do this and that. And it might just be because you're not the right fit for each other, or they might just be blowing smoke up you. But when you do find the right agent for you that really is in it for the right reason, who cares about you as a performer and who pitches you for jobs, it makes the world a difference. And because this was what is my kind of first experience properly of experiencing that and seeing the rewards from it, of both sides putting in the work, gaining the auditions, getting the roles, and being in the volume and having those experiences, and then seeing the projects come out and you're in it, is the best thing ever. And like I said, I never thought I could get into this field because I did think it was so closed off. And as I've said, or you may not know about me, you know, my family isn't from an entertainment industry, and as supportive as they are, you know, we don't have those connections like that. So now having these experiences through the hard work of myself and my agent has done, it's the most rewarding thing. And this is why I still want to continue being in motion capture stuff. Like, a lot of the jobs I've done so far have been predominantly motion capture, you know, just my body. But now having gained one role that was performance capture and having that experience and all those mixed emotions of, you know, bricking it, but just being in your element, and the feeling that I get after a motion capture day or a shoot day of me going in, being nervous, feeling like, can I actually do this? And then coming out with the feeling the biggest high is, yeah, it's nothing else like it. And hopefully one day I'll get a role or a character, maybe within like a game series or something, that I can do the full performance capture. Oh, I will be in my element. But yeah, I've got my whole career to hopefully get that. But yeah, all of the time so far, and it probably doesn't sound like a lot or many years, but It's all so worth it. Doesn't matter how long it takes. But for me, having that time and those years to really work on my skills, hone them in, and also learn more about the industry and how you conduct yourself within the industry, and see myself more as an individual and a business as well. It's been so valuable process. And as I said about that, the first motion capture audition, if that was for, to be fair, actually, it was for quite a big project. All those little things have helped me to become who I am as a performer, and help me feel so much more prepared and confident, and go into it, being prepared. That's what I'm trying to say. Sorry, I'm getting a bit sidetracked now. But yeah, whether I've gained roles through my incredible agent, or now actually like gaining some roles of my own personal connections and people who I know either from years ago, being an old friend, crazy enough, or through my networking and contacting, through building up my contacts through certain companies, it shows that it all pays off, really. And if I continue this, keep going with this, you never know what type of projects I could potentially get. You never know. So yeah, it is the old cliche, getting your foot in the door is the hardest thing. There's never a set amount of time, and it's so different for each individual. It really is. You could have no experience and get a motion capture job the next day through a spotlight job, or they saw your skills on social media, or you just applied off the cuff, or you've gone through training, you've learnt the process, and you've worked your way up through that way. Like, there's so many different avenues, and it is different for everyone. There's no one way of doing it, but I just hoped in me sharing my personal experience of how I done it. If you're similar to me as a performer, how you like to learn, this could potentially help. But hopefully it just gives you the reassurance that it doesn't matter where you start out, you can get into it. It can take a long time, and for me, once I realised that it wasn't going to happen overnight, like any of the things that I do, I know my journey within this industry will not be overnight. It will be the long road, but it's enjoying the process and experience. And as cliche as it is, that mindset really does help you stay in the game for the long haul. And it's a lot more healthy mindset to have, I feel personally, or it has been for me. Yeah. But to kind of do it in a nutshell, through my journey of training with a company, it helped me specifically develop my contacts with Centroid, which, if you don't know Centroid, they've done so many projects you cannot believe, whether it's within the film industry, gaming industry, they're an incredible company. Just building up my connections with them has helped me gain so many opportunities through them, and a really good professional relationship with certain people within the company, whether they're still within it or they've gone on to new companies. That for me alone has been so valuable to build and learn on, and that's why I do really recommend and have loved my process of how I've got into it. And yeah, I will say, I have seen people who have had no experience or haven't done any type of training, and they've landed roles overnight, but you just can't take it personally. As I said, it's different for everyone. The people who I've known who've done that, they've had such different skills, or such a specific, incredible skill. That's why they got the role. You know, often with Mocap, you're either an actor, or they hire specific people who are solely been doing that for how many years. You know, they want it to look realistic. They're not, a lot of the time, why would you hire someone who can mimic it well, or hire someone who knows it in and out and has been doing it for 20 years or whatever and is believable? So that's sometimes the differences depending on the work you might get, or why you might not get it, because they've literally hired someone who that is their profession and just got them in a suit and told, and directed them how so to do it. Good things comes to those who wait. And if this is something that you genuinely would love to get into and pursue, it will take time. It's different for everyone, but you can do it. Whether it's from an acting background or from more character, voice, monster creature type roles you want to create, or you have such a specific unique skill. Don't think any skill is too weird or different. You never know what you might be asked to do or they might want. So yeah, there's so many different avenues. There's an opportunity for all. It just depends if you can get the opportunity. So yeah, that's my kind of nutshell of how I got into it. And as much as it's a very challenging and demanding role and process of trying to get into it, it's the most rewarding thing that I've done. Yeah, it's just one of the most rewarding industries I've been or had the pleasure of being involved in so far. And of course I hope it continues and I get to push my abilities and my personal belief in myself that I can do it, and yeah, just create some incredible projects and meet so many incredible performers or just such smart people behind creating it, putting in the groundwork, and the amount of hours that goes into pre and post of the cleanup of the mocap data, and it's just so impressive. And if you admire that type of field, you will definitely enjoy the whole process of being involved in it, because yeah, sometimes I'm there for a day and then they're working on it. There's like, for example, I've done a project that I've done maybe a handful of days working on it, and it's been almost over a year and they're still working on developing on it because of how much work and time it takes to put into something. Yeah, it's awesome. I'm going to shut up now because you're probably bored of hearing about me, and hopefully this has been helpful. And of course, if there's anything that I've missed or you want further information or all of that jazz, let me know. But I will do a bit more of a specific breakdown of ways you could get into the industry, different companies you could train with, the type of companies that are out there that offer those things, or maybe just what companies or studios, what they do, or maybe if there's a specific avenue that you would like to get into, and how I personally think you could get into it, or ways I've seen people get into it. Yeah, the possibilities are endless, but I can give you a couple of different ways to look into if you really are interested in this field. But yeah, I'm going to leave it as that, because otherwise you'll be here sitting for an hour. And if you are still here watching the video, I'm very grateful, because I know my videos are very long, but I appreciate you. But yeah, good luck in your path, no matter where you get into it. And hopefully I get to work with you within the volume and we can collaborate and create some awesome stuff. So yeah, goodbye. Have a good evening. It's getting dark. Good day, good evening. Take care. Blah, 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 blah. Bye, 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 bye. You never know what might come. Bye.